Hey all, welcome back to another spicy recap, and today we're diving into Hump Bang. Episode 1, an anime where two supposedly ordinary friends apparently never received the instruction manual explaining what the words just friends are supposed to mean. Our main duo are Hiro and Koji, neighbors who have known each other for around 2 years. They're comfortable together, constantly arguing, constantly teasing each other, and apparently only one questionable conversation away from completely destroying whatever normal boundaries they had left. And episode 1 doesn't exactly ease us into this either. Nope. We're immediately thrown into what can only be described as the final boss encounter before we've even completed the tutorial. Hiro and Koji are already in a very compromising situation, with Koji taking charge and Hiro following along with his increasingly bold instructions. The dub certainly isn't subtle about what's happening, and judging by the sounds coming from these two, neither is the anime.
Hiro,
Yes?
open your mouth.
We're obviously not going to recreate the director's uncensored commentary here. Instead, imagine Koji has arrived carrying the legendary Excalibur, Hiro has apparently accepted the quest, and these two are currently attempting to clear a dungeon that absolutely did not appear on the original friendship map. There. You understand. The important part is that this opening immediately establishes something unexpected. Hiro and Koji are already incredibly comfortable crossing boundaries that normal friends probably wouldn't even approach. And apparently, this isn't some isolated incident either. Hiro essentially explains that, for better or worse, this madness has somehow become part of her daily routine. Which raises one extremely important question. How in the world did we get here?
Lately, for good or bad, this has been my daily routine.
Well, thankfully, the episode is about to explain exactly that. So let's see how this questionable little adventure begins, shall we? We rewind to Hiro and Koji having a conversation that initially couldn't be more innocent. Dinner. Specifically, hamburger steak. Hiro announces that tonight's dinner is hamburger steak, and Koji immediately decides that he's having his with a fried egg. Notice how he doesn't ask, he just announces it. Hiro understandably looks at this man and basically reminds him, "Is this your house?" An excellent question, because Koji does not actually live there. He lives next door. Koji, however, sees absolutely no issue with inviting himself to dinner. As far as he's concerned, they're practically family. And at this point, everything almost feels wholesome. Two close neighbors casually discussing dinner, Koji helping himself to Hiro's cooking, Hiro pretending she's annoyed by him, normal anime friendship stuff, for approximately 30 seconds, because Koji suddenly tells Hiro she's going to have to give him an answer soon. Hiro has absolutely no clue what he's talking about. An answer? To what? Koji explains that it's about time. Hiro immediately assumes he means, well, that, and suddenly the hamburger steak has been completely forgotten. Hiro refuses. They're not even dating. As far as she's concerned, Koji is simply her friend. More specifically, Koji keeps describing them as childhood friends. And this apparently activates something deep inside Koji's anime-addled brain, because this man suddenly launches into one of the strangest arguments imaginable. Apparently, Hiro isn't performing her responsibilities correctly. She doesn't wake Koji up every morning. She doesn't prepare lunch for him. She doesn't constantly fuss over him. She doesn't even have some adorable verbal quirk she adds to the end of every sentence. According to Koji, Hiro is basically committing childhood friend fraud. Somebody call the anime police. Koji dramatically demands to know by what right she considers herself his childhood friend when she's ignoring all the traditional duties. Hiro naturally wonders why he's getting so emotional over this. And that's when Koji reveals what he believes the minimum requirement of friendship should apparently be. Let's just say Koji wants access to the premium version. Hiro has apparently been using Childhood Friend Basic, while Koji wants to upgrade immediately to Childhood Friend Deluxe, Dungeon Expansion Pack. Hiro's response perfectly summarizes the situation. You're not making any sense. Thank you, Hiro. Somebody finally said it. But Koji insists that everybody knows how this works. Apparently, childhood friendship naturally includes certain benefits, which is fascinating because I don't remember that episode of Pokemon. Hiro isn't buying any of this. Then Koji reveals what's really been destroying his sanity, Hiro herself. Because according to Koji, having Hiro constantly around him while looking the way she does is basically psychological warfare. And okay, the anime cameraman has clearly been waiting for somebody to mention this, because Hiro's character designer apparently discovered the body proportion sliders and decided the maximum setting was merely a recommendation, especially in the Melon department. These things look like they require their own gravitational calculations. Koji essentially argues that having those legendary melons wandering around next door every day while expecting him to behave normally is completely unreasonable. Apparently, the man deserves a medal for surviving 2 years. Hiro correctly points out that her appearance isn't exactly her fault. And then she delivers the finishing blow to Koji's entire argument. She's not actually his childhood friend. She moved there 2 years ago. They've known each other for roughly 24 months. Koji processes this devastating factual evidence. That is completely beside the point. Of course it is. Facts have officially been banned from today's debate. Hiro is rapidly reaching the stage where she's considering whether hating Koji might be easier. Koji doesn't care. Instead, he presents Hiro with what he considers two perfectly reasonable options. Option 1, accept his questionable proposal. Option 2, accept his questionable proposal. Hiro immediately notices these are the same option. Koji has invented democracy. At this point, Hiro asks the question we've all been wondering. Why is this man suddenly so obsessed with entering the Forbidden Dungeon today? Did he wake up possessed? Is there a full moon? Has mating season begun? Well, Koji actually has an explanation. And somehow his explanation makes everything worse. Apparently the previous night, around 11 o'clock, Koji was enjoying some private grinding for experience points. We'll leave it there. The spring breeze was drifting through his room, so he opened the window. Koji even dramatically describes this peaceful moment as something resembling moonlight private time. Beautiful. Romantic. David Attenborough would be proud. Then Koji heard something. Suspicious noises. Coming from a certain house next door. Hiro's house. And apparently, Koji didn't need Sherlock Holmes to determine what was happening. Because while Koji was privately polishing his legendary equipment, Hiro next door had apparently begun a completely separate solo dungeon run of her own. At the exact same time, Koji experienced enlightenment. Why are they independently farming the same dungeon when they could simply create a 2-player party? Hiro experiences a different emotion. Disgust. You suck. Fair. But Koji isn't finished, because this man somehow turns being horny into an environmental issue. His argument is essentially, if both of them are independently using valuable energy to complete separate solo missions anyway, wouldn't joining forces be more efficient? Perhaps even eco-friendly? Excuse me? This man has somehow introduced climate policy into seduction strategy. Forget flowers, forget chocolates. Koji is apparently going to save the planet one questionable friendship upgrade at a time. Hiro tells him he's making absolutely no rational sense. Correct again. But Koji genuinely seems proud of this argument. Why independently polish your equipment when you could simply form a raid party? Maximum efficiency. Minimum wasted stamina. Greta Thunberg was unavailable for comment. And this is where Hiro accidentally makes a catastrophic tactical mistake. Because rather than completely rejecting him, she complains that if Koji genuinely wanted to convince her, the least he could do was establish the proper mood. Oh. Hiro? You have just given this man an opening. Koji immediately understands what she has accidentally admitted. Her problem isn't necessarily the dungeon, it's Koji's presentation. And suddenly he doesn't look quite as defeated anymore. The conversation briefly returns to dinner, with Koji once again mentioning his hamburger steak with fried egg. Hiro warns him, "Don't try to seduce me with food," which might be the most important line in this entire anime. Unfortunately, Koji has apparently decided to try something else. He moves closer. He notices Hiro smells good. Hiro immediately realizes something is happening. Koji gets closer still. And suddenly the ridiculous argument from 5 minutes ago doesn't feel hypothetical anymore. The distance between them disappears. Koji begins testing just how serious Hiro was about needing the proper atmosphere, while Hiro becomes increasingly flustered. The teasing starts, The touching becomes more affectionate, and naturally, Koji's attention eventually discovers the two enormous obstacles standing between himself and rational thought: the legendary melons. Koji is absolutely fascinated. According to Professor Koji's latest peer-reviewed research, these might be the softest objects in the known universe. NASA has yet to confirm these findings. Hiro is embarrassed, but there's a very important change here. She's no longer simply arguing with him. Instead, she tells Koji that if they're seriously going down this road, he should at least kiss her first. Well then, the dungeon gate has officially opened. Koji actually listens. They kiss, and for once, the constant joking slows down. Koji tells Hiro she's cute. That catches her completely off guard, because Hiro immediately points out that Koji has never really said something like that to her before. And beneath all the ridiculous Excalibur jokes and childhood friend contracts, this little moment actually tells us something important. These two genuinely care about each other. They've apparently spent years communicating through sarcasm, teasing, arguments, and Koji being an absolute menace. So when Koji suddenly says something sincere, Hiro doesn't quite know how to handle it. Unfortunately, wholesome Koji has a battery life of approximately 17 seconds, because he immediately returns to teasing. And now he wants answers about last night. Specifically, what exactly was Hiro imagining during her mysterious solo dungeon run? Hiro would very much like to leave that information classified. Koji keeps pushing. Eventually, Hiro reluctantly gives him enough information to realize something fascinating. Inside Hiro's imagination, Koji was considerably more commanding than the annoying neighbor standing in front of her. Apparently, Fantasy Koji unlocked the Dungeon Master skill tree. Real Koji immediately becomes unbearably smug, because Hiro has accidentally revealed that underneath all those protests is a considerably more adventurous imagination. Koji starts teasing her relentlessly. Hiro becomes increasingly embarrassed. He wants to know what happened next in her fantasy. Hiro reluctantly gives him a few more clues, and Koji apparently decides, why merely hear the walkthrough when you can attempt the dungeon yourself? This is approximately where YouTube's monetization department senses a disturbance in the force, because Koji's little friendship experiment suddenly becomes considerably more hands-on. Hiro initially remains embarrassed, especially because Koji now knows exactly what sort of scenario she'd secretly imagined. Koji uses this information with the restraint and maturity we've come to expect from him, meaning none whatsoever. He keeps teasing her, Hiro keeps getting flustered, and before long, the two are no longer discussing whether they should cross the friendship boundary. They're standing approximately 12 miles beyond it, waving goodbye. So, we'll deploy our magical YouTube censorship curtain.
I don't see the problem. We're like family, aren't we?
Behind that curtain, Koji has apparently drawn Excalibur, Hiro has entered the dungeon, and their supposedly innocent friendship has officially transformed into a full cooperative raid. We'll leave the exact combat mechanics to your imagination. What matters is how Hiro's attitude changes throughout it. Remember, this is the same woman who was telling Koji that they weren't even dating. Now she's becoming increasingly terrible at pretending she isn't enjoying his ridiculous experiment. Koji notices this immediately. Naturally, he becomes even more smug. He basically wants Hiro to admit that joining the two-player dungeon was better than privately grinding levels alone. And after all that arguing, Hiro admits it. Yes, apparently cooperative multiplayer wins. Koji has somehow proven his ridiculous theory. Not scientifically, not logically, but somehow this absolute madman has achieved a practical result. Hiro becomes increasingly enthusiastic too, essentially abandoning the defensive attitude she had earlier and finally matching Koji's energy. At this point, their friendship contract isn't merely being amended, it's currently on fire. Whatever happens during the remainder of their first raid apparently convinces Hiro that Koji's legendary equipment deserves a considerably higher item rating than she expected. And judging from Koji's reaction, Hiro's dungeon isn't exactly suffering from poor reviews either. That's all the detail the YouTube gods require. The important part is that the interaction finally reaches its conclusion, with both of them very clearly having crossed a boundary they can't simply pretend never existed. Koji even jokes afterward that now they never need to conduct their separate solo missions again. Wonderful. He's created a subscription service, and we're back where Hiro and Koji have successfully destroyed the definition of just friends, completed their first questionable cooperative dungeon, and are now about to discover that post-quest embarrassment is apparently a very real status effect. Because once reality returns, Hiro suddenly seems to process what she's actually done. The confidence disappears. The embarrassment returns. Koji, meanwhile, remains completely shameless. Because apparently post-dungeon clarity only affects one of these people. A little later, Hiro is giving Koji an absolutely murderous look. Koji asks why she's making such a scary face. Hiro ignores him. Koji finds this hilarious because only moments earlier she certainly wasn't ignoring him. Then Hiro demands something extremely important back: her underwear. Koji has apparently decided personal belongings are now collectible dungeon loot. Hiro is furious. And apparently the entire adventure ruins something else: her dinner. Remember that hamburger steak? Hiro complains that she was so embarrassed she couldn't even properly enjoy the hamburger steak and fried eggs she'd been looking forward to. There it is, the true victim of episode 1, the hamburger steak. It never asked for this. Koji continues teasing Hiro, asking whether he's managed to get her worked up again. Hiro denies everything. Naturally, Koji isn't convinced. And unfortunately for Hiro, his suspicions appear to be correct, because the first dungeon apparently had a very short respawn timer. Except there's one enormous problem. They're now in the kitchen. Somebody could walk in. Hiro immediately recognizes this. Koji apparently views it as additional difficulty. Of course he does. This man sees the words high-risk area and assumes it means bonus experience. Hiro warns him that somebody could see them. Koji basically argues that the danger makes the whole situation more exciting. And then he brings back Hiro's embarrassing confession from earlier. Remember that adventurous side she accidentally revealed? Koji certainly does. He's apparently going to remind her about it for the remainder of her natural life. Hiro protests that they absolutely cannot start another dungeon run here. Koji continues teasing. Hiro tries maintaining her composure. It lasts approximately 8 seconds. Soon enough, the atmosphere is becoming suspicious again. Koji's legendary equipment has apparently respawned. The dungeon gates are reopening, and Hiro is discovering that her earlier confidence might have created a monster. We'll once again place the tasteful censorship curtain across the screen. The important part isn't the exact button combination they're using. It's that Hiro is incredibly nervous because they're doing all this somewhere they could easily be discovered. She keeps worrying about somebody seeing them. Koji keeps finding her embarrassment amusing. The more nervous Hiro becomes, the more Koji teases her. And the more Koji teases, the less convincing Hiro becomes when claiming she wants this ridiculous situation to stop. Eventually, Hiro realizes the kitchen is perhaps not the optimal location for clearing this particular dungeon. Finally, common sense has returned. She suggests they go back to Koji's room. Much safer. Door, privacy, normal human decision-making. Excellent. Except before they can properly escape, someone from Koji's family appears nearby.
Hey, Dad! Mom called earlier and said she wants you to take a bath before she comes home.
And suddenly, our fearless dungeon raiders experience true terror. Not dragons, not demons, not the final boss. Parents. Someone calls out with a completely mundane message from Koji's mother about taking a bath before she gets home. And meanwhile, these two are desperately trying to look like they haven't just been committing crimes against the definition of friendship. Koji finds the situation hilarious. Hiro looks approximately 3 seconds away from evaporating from embarrassment. Once the danger passes, Koji reminds Hiro that she's supposedly the one insisting they return to his room. And then something unexpected happens. Hiro has apparently reached the point where caution itself has become optional. She basically decides that moving locations is going to take too long. Remember the woman from earlier? We're not dating. You're just my friend. Your argument makes no sense. That Hiro has apparently disconnected from the server. Current Hiro is essentially standing at the dungeon entrance screaming, "Q again." Character development, everybody. Koji actually warns her this time. If they're going to continue being idiots here, Hiro needs to keep herself under control because his family might hear them. Hiro promises she can, and somewhere in the universe, absolutely nobody believes her. The second major raid begins. Again, we're not reviewing Excalibur's attack animations frame by frame, but the episode makes the important character progression extremely obvious. Hiro isn't merely being dragged along by Koji's ridiculous suggestions anymore. She's actively participating in the madness. She's impatient. She's excited. She's responding to his teasing. And when Koji deliberately reminds her that somebody could discover them, Hiro becomes even more flustered. The risk of being caught hangs over the entire scene. Koji keeps pushing her buttons. Hiro tries keeping quiet. Neither appears particularly talented at responsible decision-making. At this point, the narrator would like to remind everybody that approximately one episode ago, actually approximately 20 minutes ago, these two were discussing fried eggs. Anime moves quickly. The dungeon raid eventually reaches the final boss. Hiro is barely maintaining her composure. Koji is still teasing her because apparently this man could be falling from an airplane and would use his final 30 seconds to annoy Hiro. The dub becomes considerably more enthusiastic here, and with that, dungeon cleared. Excalibur returned to inventory. Friendship absolutely destroyed. Achievement unlocked. Just friends? Definitely. After all that chaos, the episode finally gives Hiro a chance to recover. And then we jump to the following morning. Hiro looks exhausted, completely drained, like somebody stayed awake all night grinding a dungeon well beyond the recommended level requirement. And that's when Rin enters the picture. Rin immediately notices Hiro looks terrible. "Wow, you look really tired this morning." Hiro casually claims she's just a little tired. Nothing suspicious here. Absolutely ordinary evening. Definitely went straight to bed after eating hamburger steak. Rin isn't convinced. She asks whether Hiro's condition might have something to do with Koji. Hiro's reaction is immediate. No way. That's not the reason. And ladies and gentlemen, we have just witnessed one of the least convincing denials in anime history. Rin instantly knows. She was right. Hiro panics and tries stopping her, but the damage has already been done. Rin heads off ahead, clearly delighted that her suspicion was correct. Hiro, meanwhile, is probably wondering whether moving to another country would be easier than surviving this conversation. But then comes the final little interaction with Koji. And this is where we see just how much their relationship has changed. At the beginning of the episode, Hiro was adamant. They're not dating. They're merely friends. Koji's definition of childhood friendship is completely insane. His environmental argument is nonsense. His premium friendship subscription should probably be illegal. And yet, after everything that's happened, Koji jokingly pushes their relationship one step further. He asks whether Hiro is going to become his bride. Earlier, Hiro probably would have launched the hamburger steak directly at his head. But now, she gives him a surprisingly soft answer. Essentially, if Koji really wants that, maybe, and that is where episode 1 leaves us.
So it's true, isn't it? You're gonna be my sexy bride, right?
Yeah, if you really want that, Koji.
Somehow we began with hamburger steak. Then Koji attempted to legally redefine childhood friendship. Hiro revealed they've only known each other for 2 years. Koji responded by banning facts. We discovered both of them had independently been grinding suspicious solo dungeons the previous night. Koji somehow turned this information into an argument about environmental efficiency. Hiro accidentally admitted that her problem wasn't necessarily the dungeon itself, but Koji's complete lack of atmosphere. The legendary Melons received their contractual screen time. Excalibur was discovered. Several dungeons were raided. A kitchen became a danger zone. Parents nearly became an unexpected boss encounter. Rin solved the entire mystery in approximately 12 seconds. And somehow, Koji's ridiculous plan actually worked. Because underneath all the jokes, there's a surprisingly clear relationship arc here. Hiro and Koji obviously already cared about each other. They were incredibly comfortable together before any of this started. They ate together. They lived next door. They constantly teased one another. Koji's sincere compliment catches Hiro off guard because sincerity isn't how these two normally communicate. Their language is basically insults, sarcasm, and stupidity. But once Koji finally drops the jokes for a moment and tells Hiro she's cute, we see why Hiro eventually becomes willing to cross that boundary with him. And Hiro's transformation is just as obvious. At first, she's rejecting Koji's proposal entirely. Then she's criticizing his technique. Then she's asking for some actual romance. Then she's revealing what she'd secretly imagined. Then the dungeon gates open. And by the second raid, Koji isn't even the one convincing her anymore. Hiro is practically holding the quest marker herself. So no, these two definitely aren't just friends anymore. Whether they're actually going to admit they're a couple is another matter entirely. But considering Hiro doesn't completely reject the idea of becoming Koji's bride, I'd say that premium friendship subscription has officially renewed. And that's where Hump Bang Episode 1 comes to an end. If you enjoyed today's spicy recap, make sure you leave a like, subscribe for more, and let me know what you thought about Hiro and Koji's absolutely flawless understanding of friendship down below. And remember, if somebody ever tells you that combining your dungeon runs is better for the environment, do not accept their scientific findings without peer review. And please, pour one out for Hiro's hamburger steak. It deserved better. I'll see you all in the next recap.